Welcome to the Wild Type Podcast. I'm Lyssa Lizards.
I'm Neptune Chameleon.
And we're your reptile girlies.
Okay, episode 1 of the podcast was dating with reptiles.
Yes.
Our very first episode, which feels like...
Why does that feel like a lifetime ago?
Probably because it was.
It was.
For a goldfish, it was a lifetime ago.
I know.
So I bring that up because now I'm not just dating with reptiles. I'm dating with baby reptiles. Like dating as a breeder, I feel like has like unlocked a new level.
Oh, yeah. And like just for all the reptile girlies, she came to this conclusion like just the other day. And
I'm like assembling like 40 baby enclosures and I'm on the dating apps.
That's I know. So many.
I know. I only have like 12 done so far. Anyways, and I'm on the dating apps, right? So I'm like, checking my phone. I'm like messaging with like guys or whatever. And I go, nowhere on my profile does it mention I have reptiles, right? Which is a hurdle in and of itself, right? Yeah. Of like, how do you approach that?
That's its own thing.
It's its own thing. And then being a reptile like content creator
is also
another
its own
thing.
Then having a podcast
that's a whole nother thing. And then it's like, by the way, I have like, or will have, hopefully,
40 baby chameleons.
Yeah. And then you're going to like introduce me to your friends and be like, oh yeah, she has chameleons. And they're like, how many do you have?
45.
40? Like, what am I, like, that's just a whole nother
it's
level.
So funny. So like, and just receiving that text was also the first time that I had like even considered that. Cause like, I've obviously like been on this whole journey with you and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, you're actually going to have to own the title of like, I breed chameleons when you meet new people. Yeah. Which is wild.
Yeah. It's a very similar, I think, kind of realization of like when you got Hazel.
Yes.
And I was like, you're going to be dating as like someone who has snakes, not just lizards. And that's a whole nother level.
Also, not just snakes, but one that is labeled
a boa
constrictor.
Yeah.
And then I just like went full send and like got an anaconda.
But my thing is like, just like how you found Logan, who was like, cool. Yeah. Whoever I end up with is gonna be like, cool. Like that's your thing.
Honestly, like the biggest like tell for me was how like Logan handled that. I mean, I had like a lot of guys like handle it pretty well for the most part, but like Logan was the only one that looked me dead in the eye when I told him about the reptiles, and he was like, I can tell you're really passionate about it. It's really cool that this is like such a passion for you.
And I think that's the thing. That's the key. Right? Is like you don't have to have the same interest, but seeing your person or your partner get excited about their thing, then that like gives you all the warm and fuzzies.
And, like Logan's an airplane junkie and like loves airplanes, so like we'll be driving and he'll just be like, ooh, plane. And I'm like, keep driving. So like, everybody has their passions.
Everyone's got their thing. Yeah. So anyways, that's a recent realization. I have not gone on any first dates since having this realization. So more to
we'll keep you posted. That'll be interesting.
More to come on that. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't quite like processed how I feel about that yet. But I guess it's because I haven't had that conversation
You've
yet.
also been like processing a lot. So like we'll give that some time.
Not gonna lie, the fact that like my future significant other will have not met Neptune definitely also like was a thought, and that like,
oh my God, I haven't had that thought. I'm so sorry.
So having to like explain how big of a like impact
he had on your life.
Yeah, but then not having met him, but then like he has such a huge legacy, both in these babies, but also in my channel, is like a very bizarre
feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, haven't quite processed.
A lot of processing going on.
That also, no one has asked me yet in real life, like how many chameleons I have, and having to like give that answer. We got some things to work on, but it's all part of the journey. And honestly, that's a really good segue for like what we're talking about, which is just like the challenges that come with reptile keeping. Obviously on this podcast we talk a lot about like the physical piece of it, the care changing, the emotional piece of it, like things in the hobby that can be like really, really awesome and can be a
conflicting
challenge.
Emotions, different things, like all kinds of stuff.
What about the stuff that has nothing to do with reptiles that like impacts our lives and everything? So I'm gonna kind of like stop talking here for a second and pass it over to you, because I think this is going to be a really, really special episode and like a really challenging episode. So any of you listeners, be nice. Like this is not going to be an easy episode. And like as your friend, I like really commend you for like what's about to go down. So over to you. I feel like that was I hyped that up, but like
no, you're good.
You guys read the title, you know what you're walking into.
We're talking about, and I feel like we've hinted about it a lot, right? Like I feel like over the last 6 months or so, I have been definitely with the Reptile Girlies on the podcast more vocal and more honest about like my enclosures aren't where I want them to be. I have all these upgrades that I need to do. I have all these like improvements I'm trying to make, and I've been frustrated with it and this and that. Yeah. So I feel like I've been as open as I felt like I could be, but now I feel like I'm going to get a little more vulnerable, which I'm like a little bit scared of. So just to reiterate, everybody, please be nice. but I feel like the Reptile Girlies will really get it. At least some will, some won't. And that's okay. Like, take what resonates, don't take what doesn't. But like I have, and again, I've alluded to all this, but I'll just get into it like a little bit more today of like, I've been really, really struggling the last year and a half with my personal mental health journey. And that is something that I personally, some people have started struggling with that in like middle school, in like high school, in like even younger. Like some people have dealt with this their whole lives. Like, and not to like hype myself up or anything, but like my whole life, I have been like the epitome of like an overachiever. Like I have been so on top of everything. I have been like I come from like the ad agency world of like I'm a rock star, like I get everything
you
done.
Totally, like you're the person with little sticks juggling the plates while like playing a trombone and like spinning. And you're like the epitome of someone who like excelled in that and thrived honestly 100%. In that like your schedule being packed like top to bottom, left to right.
My entire 20s, like literally I had like no free time. Like I had no,
I would have to like text you like 2 weeks in advance of like pencil me in for like a 30-minute conversation or whatever.
I've always like been functioning and like running on like all cylinders, like always giving my best, always like doing all of that stuff. And for the first time in my life in the last like few years, I kind of like have crashed and burned. And that's been like really, really difficult for me to grasp that like being super high functioning and super like high achieving is no longer something that I like call or consider myself, when that has been like a defining feature of who I am my whole life. And so that's something, and just to clarify, like I've been in therapy, I've like seen a couple therapists and things like that, but I haven't been like diagnosed with anything mental health wise. I do want to like give that like disclaimer clarity. Like
sure.
I'm not saying, that I've been diagnosed with anything along those lines, but I've just been like severely struggling, and there's like a lot that is led up to it, and a lot of how it has impacted my reptile keeping journey and my pets and how I've kept them and my standard of care and my expectations and my own self-doubt and like all these different things.
Yeah. And you're not alone in that, right? Like all of us have experienced that in one way or another. So like our hope out of getting like sharing all of this is that you guys feel seen and feel heard, because it can be so easy, especially on social media, to see everyone else presenting these friends of these like beautiful enclosures or all these upgrades or all their pets are thriving and all this, and it can be so like we are our own worst enemy, and like we are our own like critics in comparing ourselves. And they always say comparison is the thief of joy, but what happens when you compare yourself to yourself, like your former self?
That's literally like, that literally has been probably the biggest thing that I have like really just been like accidentally like kicking myself for the last year, is like, you're better than this. You can do more than this. You're capable of more. Why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you like it together?
Because in the past, like in the past you have been doing that, and that's so hard to do. And it's unfair for anyone who's listening. Like maybe you need to hear this, right?
Please hear this.
It's unfair to compare yourself to a past version.
Yes.
The only thing you can compare yourself is to your best for today.
Yes.
And which is going to look different than your best from yesterday and your best from tomorrow.
I think the fact that your best, what you consider your best, can vary is something that at 27, 28, and 29 years old, I like didn't know was possible. I always just knew my best is my best, period. It doesn't change. And then when I like hit 30, it was like, oh, your best is completely skewed from what you thought it was. And now it looks totally different. And you just have to accept that.
Yeah.
And like accepting that and not comparing feels impossible. It feels so just not even on like the playing field of what you're capable of, which is
because you've done it before. So like, why can't I do it now?
Right.
But in your particular situation, like you had, like they say, when it rains it pours. You had like a freaking tsunami.
Okay, can we like read my list? I have a list of all the stuff that
like,
happened to me.
Again, this is like going back to what I was saying of like on social media, it's however people present themselves. You don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
And that's something that like we kind of talked about in like our little like pregame before this conversation is like, I'm aware that like coming with like a large audience and with like the platform that I do have and all of that, like I'm aware that in a certain realm, like I am a role model to some people. Some people might look up to me and things like that. And that is something that's been weighing like really, really heavily on me while I've been dealing with this. And so like what we talked about was that like part of us wanting to talk about this and be vulnerable and have this conversation is because I want you guys to understand that like even the people that you may put up on a pedestal, even the people that you know, may look at as like the epitome of top tier reptile keeping, like you have no idea what they're
human.
Yeah. Like
everyone has lives outside of their animals. Even people who do it full time, even breeders who are full time, like they still have lives, they still have families, they still have things that are out of their control, in their control, and we are honestly at the mercy of the elements. And I think almost everything, if not everything on your list is something that was like out of your control.
Completely out of my control. Like it's so I'll kind of start with like
read it off, man. Like this
I know it's kind of wild. So
a lot.
So first off, I'll say like I started posting on TikTok in January of 2021 and like my 2021 self, frankly, is like I've been comparing myself to like every version of myself in my head, but my 2021 self is the one that was like posting on TikTok 3 times a day, shooting out content like crazy, building enclosures every single day, doing all this stuff. So like I went from like my 2021 self, like killing it in the content realm, like growing like crazy, so fast, like all this stuff, to basically 2022 hit. And now we get to my list.
So Once upon a time.
Yeah. So 2022 hit. My grandfather passed away. And I was lucky enough to have all 4 of my grandparents until I was nearly 30 years old. And so I think I was 30, actually. I think it was, yeah. Anyway, but so that was like the first big like loss.
And that was the beginning of the year.
That was February 2nd.
Yeah.
So it was like literally the very beginning of the year. January 2022, I lost Yoda, my Leachianus gecko, in a freak accident. That was awful, horrific. So 2022 started off real strong with Yoda's passing and then my grandfather's passing. So like the grief of all of that was a lot. Then on top of that, I had 3 other reptiles pass. And those were, again, like one of them I literally took like in for like a surgery and it like didn't fix like the infection. The vet couldn't even figure out what was going on. So like none of these deaths had anything to do with like my care at all.
No.
And my care was still very like top tier, like my high standards at that time too. So
it was really bad timing. And this is one of the things, you've mentioned this before, how like you had Charlie and then you got Barney and then you got this like really big like excitement for the hobby and you got like a bunch of different species.
I 100% had like a couple years there where I got way too many animals way too fast. And I think that kind of the reality is for anybody who like might be in one of those phases of like wanting to like work with all these species and, you know, have all these species and stuff like that, like just take it slow, because unfortunately, if you get them all at the same time, you run the chance of losing a lot of them at the same time. And that can be...
It just makes it worse.
Speaking from experience, it doesn't do great things for your mental health, okay? So there's that, especially if you're a pet keeper too. It's just like...
That's why I'm like, I definitely know I want these other species.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, but how old's my youngest one? And then if I carry the one and move the decimal point over, like
space them all out. Yeah. Like you gotta... So... Then I had a hospitalization and I found out that I got a diagnosis with my esophagus. I've got eosinophilic esophagitis. If anybody wants to look that up, it's super cool. But found that out. Also, summer of 2022, I was laid off from my marketing tech job. And I had actually only had that job for, I think, like 6 to 8 months. But I was just at the point where I was really loving it. And I was like really like excited and had an amazing boss. And so that was like a really hard loss. And then 3 months later, I got engaged. And I was like, low, low, high, high. It was like basically like the gist of this that you'll see is like I went through like a 2-year series of like the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. And it was so emotionally confusing.
Yeah.
And so
you want to celebrate the highs, but then you still have the lows sitting in the back of your mind. So you're like, and you're trying to process and grieve those at the same time.
Exactly. And like figuring out how to be really happy while in the midst of being really sad is like, it's so weird.
You're like, is it bad for being happy?
Right.
Is it bad for like being guilty? Sad?
Yes.
You know, because like I should be happy, but I should be sad. And like, what are the right emotions to feel? And like, can't win in that situation.
And like having my grandmother at my engagement party, but my grandpa isn't there, but he was 8 months before that. You know what I mean? It's just like those kind of like feelings are super hard. And so then like I jump into 2023, right? So I like started wedding planning, which but I think what we've made it very clear to the reptile girlies that I'm the negative Nancy on this podcast between the two co-hosts. And
I feel like you're like the realist Rhonda.
It's realism, okay? It's realism. It's not pessimism. It's realism. I am realistic.
You are. You're like, you're right on it.
I know, but it's like wedding season. If you have ever been married, if you have ever planned a big wedding, and when I mean big, we invited over 200 people. I think we landed at like 160 or something total guests, but like
fantastic wedding, by the way. 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Thank you. The fact that I planned that in some of my craziness of that time is like really, really pat myself on the back for that one.
You should. It was great.
But if you've ever planned a wedding, you know what that comes with. And I wish I could say that I was one of those brides that's like, oh, it was blissful. It was everything was amazing. It was not. There
were moments, right?
But then there were good moments.
Equally the parts that like were not great.
But I will also say with the utmost confidence, I would literally rather do anything else in the whole world than ever plan another wedding ever again.
I'm already budgeting for a wedding planner.
Yeah, please, please. That was my biggest mistake. But with wedding planning comes a lot of drama, comes a lot of family stuff, comes a lot of expectations, a lot of like
decision making,
hard
opinions,
hard conversations. Like it's rough. And it's a really weird, hard, happy, sad, emotional, weird time. And so that was a big part of my 2023, obviously. I also got courthouse married in the midst of all that. Mm-hmm. And then Logan's grandfather passed away. So we had, another amount of grief that we dealt with that. And then this one is crazy. My husband, because we were courthouse married at that time, got hit by a car in a crosswalk while walking.
Actually hit by a car.
Like, I'm not joking. That was insane. Oh, and we were like 2 or 3 weeks out from moving in together. So he's like, he can't help, you know, after that. So that was a whole big thing.
When was
hold on. So then we moved in together, and Logan sliced his arm open on a broken mirror while moving.
That required stitches. We thought it popped an artery, and I was rushing him to the ER. I don't think that's on your list. His wallet got stolen.
Oh my God. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
On his bachelor trip, I'm smiling. I should not be smiling.
It's because everything's fine. That's why.
Everything's fine. So now all this is like funny to like look back on, but he also got his wallet stolen on his bachelor trip at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So that was awful. It worked out. Thank God he like made it on his flight without an ID. I still like don't understand how they allowed that, but whatever. So there was all that. So then this one was crazy. I accepted a new job and quit that new job within 1 week.
Oh, I honestly forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was like a really emotional, like it was like within 1 week of starting this job, I was like, I've made a mistake.
So here, just a little bit of context, because I can realize that might sound bad, without
probably.
The context. Going through the interview, they said it was going to be all these things.
Yes.
And then based off of your experience with like working with agencies,
Yes.
like you're like,
it was not,
you saw the writing on the wall and like
I
very
saw
much
the red
realized
flags,
that this was going to be like a bad fit, and it was not what they had initially said in the interview.
All of that. And in addition to that, I had, in the midst of being laid off and searching for a new job, ended up going a little bit like all in on my business and started taking social media clients, right? And so at the same time that I had like accepted this job, there were clients, big, exciting, amazing clients like waiting in the wings that I hadn't heard back from. And then all of a sudden at the same time, they were like, we want to hire you on, blah, blah, blah. So it was like, I ended up having to like choose
Pick
between the job I had just accepted and like continuing my business, which was also like a big, scary venture during a wedding year.
Yep.
So that was all compiled. So add to the list, started my business during all of that as well. And then I lost Monkey, my crested gecko, at that time, which was another like freak thing, not related to care. No idea what happened. No clue what happened, out of nowhere. Then I got diagnosed with endometriosis, polyps, and a uterine fibroid. And that all got diagnosed from a surgery that I was having to have one of those removed. So that was really cool. And that has led into like my health journey that was like 2024. So all of that. Then 9 days before the wedding, we found our dog with a broken leg who required a $7,000 vet surgery bill.
Yep.
While, again, planning and paying for a wedding.
And then the surgery happened the day you guys left for your honeymoon.
Yep.
So you dropped him off though, right?
Well, no. So my parents dropped him off.
Yeah.
Like my wonderful parents took him on
the plane to their honeymoon while the dog that they just
is in surgery.
Is
I'm
like
getting
surgery.
I was literally like getting updates from my mom like on the plane. Yeah. Like it was
You can't move your honeymoon. Like
Logan and I had like a good cry in the kitchen about that like surgery bill because we were like not expecting that. We were like, but this is our baby. Like, what do we do? All of that. Then we had the actual wedding, right?
Yep.
Which was wonderful, crazy, the highest of highs, like literally could not have been better. Like the most incredible week of my life, but also very stressful at the same time. Then we come back from our honeymoon and I find Barney on the bottom of his enclosure, very visibly, clearly not okay. And if I'm being really honest, that was definitely like the catalyst for how bad things have gotten for me mentally, which is something I don't think I've like, I don't think I've fully processed that until very recently, like how big of a role losing him played in this mental health issue. Like I knew that I was like having mental health struggles, but I like didn't recognize in the midst of it how much losing him played a role, if that makes sense.
You've said this before, like soul chameleon.
Yeah.
And like it's not an understatement like that. No. And with an elderly like animal period, but like it was months leading up to the honeymoon where like the emotional toll of...
I knew he was like slowing, if I'm being completely honest, during that time of like the few months like right before the wedding, like I knew he was slowing down. He had been slowing down for about 6 months. And when I say slowing down, I just mean like he had been kind of like not necessarily eating less, but a little bit here and there. His tongue wasn't like doing as well, which is like one of the first things to go.
Yeah, a little bit of weight loss.
But like slow. I got him a fecal test. I like made sure that like that wasn't the issue. And I was like, okay, he's just slowing down. It was just like those little things.
But you can't deny that there's not an emotional, mental, like in the back of your head, knowing that like your clock is running out in the impact that has.
If I'm being really honest, I think it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise that I had the distraction of like the wedding planning at the time.
Keep you busy.
Because I don't think it ever really registered until the day that I got back from the honeymoon, like how much he was really slowing down. Like I knew that he was slowing down, but I don't think it hit me like, oh, he is like almost gone kind of a thing until I got back from the honeymoon.
And also your honeymoon was like the longest you had been away from him. So I think there's something too of like seeing him before you left that period of time and then seeing him
when I got back.
Yeah. And it was like with fresh eyes, right? Versus when you see him every single day, then like
point. I didn't
it's
think
not
about
as
that.
Stark as a like realization.
It wasn't as like black and white.
Yeah.
So hey, reptile girlies, if you're tired of explaining why your spare room looks like a mini Jurassic Park, meet Scratches, the social app where exotic pet owners find their people.
Just add photos of you and your scaly babies, set your filters to reptiles, and start scrolling through local pet parents who get it. No more awkward first date explanations about your ball python collection or why you have a cricket farm.
Whether you're looking for friendship, romance, or someone who can pet sit your beardy, your community is just a match away.
Download Scratches today and start connecting with reptile people in your area. Available on iOS and Android.
Have you guys checked out the Palm Street app yet? Pangea is going live in the Palm Street app every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. They'll be doing giveaways every 10 minutes, and geckos are starting at $1. They also have the cheapest shipping for reptiles on the Palm Street app, and they don't even charge extra shipping for additional geckos. And don't miss their free shipping on dry goods supplies purchased in their store. And then we started a podcast. In the midst of it,
Yep.
We launched the podcast on December 1st. Barney passed away on November 6th.
But we started like really going hard on the podcast as soon as your wedding was over.
So it was like end of October. So basically Barney passed away in like the midst of like the most work that we were doing on the podcast.
Yep.
So it was a lot. And so that's pretty much like, I guess, everything that like leads up to where I started 2024. And if I'm being really honest, something that I have processed very recently, and I mean in the last like 2 weeks, is like recognizing the fact that I do believe that losing Barney, and this, I hate even saying this, and I don't want the reptile girlies to like, I don't know, take this type of way, but like, I think I temporarily lost the joy in reptile keeping because I lost him. I think that it really rocked me to the point of me like almost feeling like, is this what I want to be doing? Like, do I want to be a reptile keeper without Barney? Like, and I don't think that was like a thought that like really hit my head but I think it was the feeling of that question, but I had never put it into the sentence until the last few weeks. And like, I think losing him really rocked me to the point of like not knowing if I wanted to continue or not feeling like I was worthy of like continuing the reptile keeping.
The loss is hard.
It was.
I've seen a lot of comments of people like, this is why I don't keep chameleons, is because their life expectancy.
Yeah.
And like we pour our heart and soul into these animals that only give us 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
In return, and to like feel that over and over and know with like almost 100% confidence you're going to outlive all of your species, with the exception of like some reptiles, but like generally speaking, right? Like especially the ones you keep, right? Like,
of course,
you're going to outlive all of them. So to know that you have to, like, you're signing up for this loss,
for that grief
over and over and over, and this is slightly different than like cats or dogs, is that you typically only have like one, two, three, right? That you're going through, versus reptiles, you could have 5, 6, 7, like 10, 11, like a lot more.
By the time I'm 70, I will probably have lost 20 reptiles. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
that is a lot of death, grief and loss that you're having to deal with. And you kind of have to carry on because you still have all your other reptiles that are 100% dependent on you.
And that, exactly what you just said, of like, you have to carry on, you have to keep caring for them, is I think what is kind of like the culmination of like where I've been at in 2023, is like the guilt and shame of feeling like I am not caring for my reptiles to the high caliber of standard that I set for myself. And don't get me wrong, like, let me be so clear. Like, my reptiles have not suffered. They have not gone without. They have not gone without food. Like, I've literally been hand misting these guys for the last year.
It just goes back to the your best versus
what my
your best
previous best was. Yeah. It's like my standard of care.
You're comparing yourself to you, not even to everyone else. And like,
right.
That like I said it before, like can sometimes be worse than the other scenarios where you're comparing yourself to other people.
Right. And so like that aspect of it, of like feeling like I'm not even good enough compared to myself, was like it weighed so heavy for so long. And I've been for a long time in this like just state of paralysis of that. And I do want to say too, I think some of me feeling this way compared to who I used to be and how I used to like handle everything and that like high achieving, like whatever, my therapist has definitely let me know that I am very hyper independent. I have been since I was a small child. That is no surprise to anyone in my family, but I've always been very hyper independent. And so like, because of that, I think part of the reason I was so like, go, 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 do, like get everything done. Like you're a rock star, get everything, you know, you're all good to go. I don't think I have ever in my entire life allowed myself or been capable of allowing myself to truly fall apart in any way emotionally, because I didn't feel like I could, because I had so many people like counting on me, relying on me, this and that. But I think
that's so huge. Yeah.
And I think like, if I'm being really open and honest, like finding my person, finding Logan, who like I knew that I could fall apart because he would pick up the pieces and like he was like could be there for me. And like for the first time in my life, I really felt like I had, and like I have an amazing family, I have amazing friends, like I definitely could have like leaned on any of them, but like finding your person and like really being able to like fully lean on them in that way is like something that I have never experienced in my lifetime. And I think because I had Logan and because I could rely on him in that way emotionally is what allowed me to finally, for the first time in my life, truly crumble. And I think that is really like why it happened and why I got to the point that I have, because I had him and I knew that like he would take care of me and like we would be okay because we had each other, kind of a thing.
That's so special though. Like
I know. And I'm
what
like,
a magical thing to experience, and like so many people aspire to that. And like, had you not, like, obviously no one wants to like have that
fall
feeling.
apart. Yeah.
But if the alternative scenario would have been that you just kept going, you would have crashed probably 10 times harder. 10
times harder.
With no one to help pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
So to have that safe space and like, I think also building your home together and like having a physical place where you can just like.
Where I feel safe to do that.
To just like truly feel these things that probably have been there.
Totally.
All along, but like.
I've never allowed myself to feel them.
Right. Because you have to keep going. You know, and like, and then this goes back to, well, then like, how does that impact your reptile care, right? Because like, obviously we know how it impacts us as personally, individuals, but when we have these reptile chores that we've talked about previously, right? Yes. When you have these animals that have like very low margin for error, like how do you do that? When you're in a hobby that is constantly preaching upgrade, improvement, do more, proper bigger care, is better, bigger is better, like. That is so hard to be on social media as a creator, but to be a keeper, just consuming that content, to not constantly feel like you're not good enough. Yeah, constantly. Period. Just as a general feeling. But then you couple that with like what
caring for animals and
going through as an individual, where you're already feeling like you're not good enough.
In general.
They're like, how am I supposed to
carry on? I know. And so it's like, basically because of all that, like, let me look at my notes because I feel like I've kind of lost my place a little bit. I got a little emotional there. But basically, like, with all of that comes just the guilt and shame of feeling like you're not good enough, of feeling like your care isn't good enough. And that's the paralysis that I got stuck in for so long. And slight segue, just a little bit. I mean, still the same topic, but this is where it comes into like the content creator aspect of like where I've been with like inconsistency and like all of that stuff that I've been struggling with the last year. So for my Halloween party this year, I've been slowly learning to read tarot, which is like a fun thing. And for anybody, please don't get spooked out by it. The way that I look at tarot is it is very much like a self-reflection tool of it helps you kind of like look at your life, analyze it, and like think through like, why am I feeling that way? Why does that card resonate? Like, how do I relate to that? Yeah. And different things. And so I actually did a reading on myself the other day. I do these almost every day and just kind of like think through where I'm at for that day or that week. And one that I had the other day like resonated so hard for me. Basically, so it's the Queen of Wands reversed for anybody who knows what that means. But this specific sentence was in like the little guidebook that I was like looking through for it. And it basically says total loss of confidence in your authenticity. And that registered like so deeply for my mental health journey as a content creator and a reptile keeper, because I think basically like due to my loss of like losing Barney, all the other grief, all the other like highs, lows, the roller coaster I was on, I think because my care wasn't up to the standards that I have set for myself over the last 10 years, that like I lost confidence in myself and my own authenticity and who I am and what I preach and what I educate and what I do. I literally feel and felt. I mean, I still feel it. I'm still working through these things, like, but I lost total confidence in the fact that I was worthy of it because I haven't felt like I've been being authentic at all.
It's hard to turn on the camera and to turn on your, personality and be like, like you should do all these things and like,
but I'm not doing them.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to stand in front of your enclosures when they're not currently at a place that you
standards.
Feel proud of.
Right.
Right. And like, I know there's so many, I've seen like comments recently of, so like I posted like a really sappy, like TikTok of basically how like seeing your empty reptile enclosure for the first time is like absolutely heartbreaking. And so many people were like saying how they haven't been able to post content of their enclosures because of the state that they're in for whatever reason, whether it's the loss of an animal or like some infectious something that like mealy bugs or whatever that like riddled through your enclosures.
I forgot that was also on my list of the things. Right before Logan and I moved, I had the mealy bug infestation, which completely killed all of my bioactive enclosures.
Dude,
so when I moved, I had to gut all of my bioactive enclosures, which I think is a big part of the reason I haven't been up to my own care standards, because I preach so much bioactivity and I currently don't have a single bioactive enclosure. They're all naturalistic. I did last night though, just refresh all the plants in 2 of my gecko enclosures. So we're getting there. But it was just...
but like, so my point I was trying to make though, no, you're good. That was important too, is that it's hard to make content when you don't feel good about what you're showing, right? Because a lot of times like we want to show things that we're proud of, right? And this is not just with reptile keeping both our lives, right? Like that's just us as humans, right? We're innately like hardwired to want to do that.
Totally.
And also get that validation externally of like, that is a beautiful enclosure. That is really cool and awesome. And you're like, thank you. I spent so much time on this and you feel really good about it. Try doing that though when you're not having that.
And I think that's what it is like for over a year now, I have not felt proud of my setups. I have not felt proud of my standard of care that I've been showcasing. And it just, because of that, I total loss of confidence in my own authenticity, and like trying to like crawl your way back to being that authentic self while you feel like you're like hiding things is so hard.
No, it's an icky
feeling.
When you are someone who presents yourself as like a very genuine, authentic, real person, and then to all of a sudden be like, everything's great when it's not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so proud of my enclosures when you're not. When you say you should do bioactive when you're not doing it, like that is... then I don't want to touch it. I'm just not going to do it.
And so I've been in that paralysis of like, well, I can't make a video. Well, I'm not making a video. Well, I'm not doing that. I can't do that series until I start this. And then it's a snowball and then you do nothing.
Ugh. Yeah.
And then you're overwhelmed by the fact that you're doing nothing.
Right. And then you're beating yourself up for not doing nothing.
And then it's a cycle and you're ultimately not healing.
No.
So that's like the state I've been in for the last year, is like not healing, not being okay, not coming to terms with the fact that Barney's lost, like, or gone, like not like, it's just all of those things pile and pile and pile. And then you feel like you're under this mountain that you like can't get out from underneath.
I also think something we haven't touched on, I know some listeners and you as well, and like myself as well, have related to, is like the perfectionist mentality. Is because like, okay, so you're in this like process, but then you get that little urge of like, okay, today is the day that I'm going to get it done. That enclosure that's been sitting there waiting to be built, or like you've built it, but you haven't done the background or whatever it is that like is holding you back. You're like, yes, I'm going to do it. And then you just like still can't do it because if I don't do it like this and this, but what if I change my mind but this, and then there's this perfectionist mentality, and this hobby unfortunately lends itself for the perfectionist, which like completely love that, hate that, you know, because then it makes you like do right by your animals, but at the same time you never feel good enough.
It's a lot of like added pressure and just like icky feelings, and
so then you have the paralysis of like, if I'm doing it, it has to be perfect, especially when you're like spray foaming these backgrounds, because they're really challenging to like undo if you mess it up. So it feels like a one-time, don't mess this up.
It feels so permanent. It feels like you cannot screw it up.
And you just dropped a couple $100s on this enclosure, and then you're going to like do something wrong. So I feel like that's another element of just the reptile hobby and mental health in general. And I know one thing that we had touched on in our like pregame, I love that you called it that, is just like depression as a whole, when your own personal motivation isn't there. And we were talking, you brought up a great point, but that for some people, having reptiles and pets can actually be what jumpstarts you.
What motivates you.
Yeah, to get out of bed and like have a sense of purpose beyond just yourself, which I think can be really special and fantastic. Totally. But you also have scenarios where it's the opposite of that, and then like things aren't up to where you want them to be as a keeper. Yeah.
And so it's like, I kind of just had jotted down something of basically like what you just said of it can go, no, that was perfect. No, but like some people, it gives them the motivation, whereas other people, it made me question if I even wanted to be doing this.
Yeah.
Or if I should be doing this. Or
do you have, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, that was my thought.
Okay. Do you have any advice for someone who's like maybe going through this? Because I have to imagine someone's listening to this and going, me too. Either has felt it or is currently feeling it, you know?
Yeah, I honestly,
looking back in hindsight, if you could have done it differently, I don't know, is there?
Honestly, because I'm not fully out on the other side of it yet, no. Okay,
well, I'm going to speak for you for a second then, and my own observations, because you've done something recently that I would highly recommend for anyone. Make small mini goals.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
Because I think it can be so daunting when you're looking at enclosure builds, or your enclosures have just kind of taken a nosedive, right? And you're like, I got to refresh all these. Or you're wanting to just like upgrade them all to larger enclosures, or just try bioactive. Literally, whatever it is,
the goal is,
make it into something that's small, so you can have these small little wins, even if it's just like take the things out of the box for the enclosure.
Yeah. Or like for me,
just build the enclosure.
I think I like had posted this on TikTok, but whenever I did that spray foam, I was like, I did it, guys. I haven't done anything else.
Right.
I haven't finished anything else on it, but I did the spray foam.
Right.
And that was a win.
Right.
I took the win.
And the spray foam was sitting there next to your beautifully like cut out pieces. And I think you were going to try and do it all in one weekend of like spray foaming it and then doing this and then coloring it.
And I got overwhelmed by the thought of that one weekend. So I broke it down into like, okay, if I can just get the spray foam done, if I can just get that substrate added, if I can just get, that enclosure like half done, if I can just like
whatever is realistic, like setting yourself up for success,
or even frankly not even realistic, whatever is like the lowest level of what you can commit to.
That means it's realistic.
But it's like whatever.
It doesn't have to be anything big though,
but teeny tiny realism is, and that's truly. So I think one of the other things I kind of wanted to like segue into like kind of towards the end of all this here is like, I am still like coming out of this, but I feel like I'm on the other end of it. And because I feel like I'm on the other end of it, I think a big part of that is like those tiny little wins. So if you can do those tiny little things and get kind of to the other end of it, I think that is like the main thing. But I think because I feel like I am finally coming out of this paralysis that I've had, finally coming out of this like, and it's a progress. And I'm, like you said, I'm doing those like small snackable, it's like been, exciting like, things.
So exciting for me to see, because I can see how excited you are. And like, it's just little like adding your plants, right?
I'm
like
so excited.
And it honestly, while it is a small task, makes a big difference. Like in the enclosure, right?
Yes.
So I think that's like,
and I think
really great.
This is kind of like the culmination of it. Like I think it's really important if you're going through an episode like this, if you're kind of like dealing with mental health, if you're kind of struggling with your enclosures or your animals or whatever. For me, like I was kind of asking myself, like longevity wise, like how long is too long for like my animals to be in care standards that don't equate to what I view as like the epitome of my care.
When you start having those tough conversations.
Yeah. And like for me, it's been about a year, right? Where like I haven't been meeting my own standards. And again, no animals suffered. No animals were like going without, but I wasn't meeting my own care standards. And because of that, like I had kind of started asking myself, but now that I feel like I'm coming out, the joy.
Asking yourself what though? Because you haven't actually.
Oh, I didn't say it. Sorry. No. If you can't tell, I'm like anxious and nervous.
No, but I think people need to hear it like.
Yeah.
Out loud.
Like what I had written was basically how long is too long before you have to make a head-heart decision of what's best for your animals. Like
implying like rehoming them.
Yeah.
Right? Of either like, downsizing or maybe to the point where you just like stop keeping reptiles, which is like an absolutely heartbreaking, gutting, like
terrifying thought.
Even to think about that.
Terrifying thought.
But we always, like when you make these commitments to these animals, you're not making the commitment to keep them forever. You're making the commitment to do right by them.
Yes.
And in some instances, that is having them for the entire of their lifespan. And in other instances, it's rehoming them, right? And like quality of life and quality of care. And like, where is your threshold of like, peak, top, whatever, versus like we are now providing subpar, where you're below that threshold of whatever you're comfortable with your animals, and you're saying you never got to that point.
No,
but
I did have like the thought where I was like,
if this continues on, am I going to get to that point? And then what am I going to do? Like, and like, kudos to you, because one, that takes immense courage, right? To even like think about that. Ugh, but like you're doing right by your animals, so like it's like a rehoming episode. It just like it was really hard, but that's tough. What we have to.
But it's like for me, you know, that question only you can answer. Only you know what is best for your animals. Only you know what is best for you. And for me personally, I am finally feeling the joy of the hobby coming back to me. And it's something that's been gone for the last year. And reptile keeping and the love of the hobby is something that's been in me since I was like 13 years old. And so losing that, even just for 1 year, felt really monumental. It felt really scary. And so kind of questioning that was very scary. But because I feel the joy of it creeping back in, I know that like I'm not going to have to rehome. I'm not going to have to give this up. I'm not going to have to like move on.
You're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, getting your joy, getting your spark. You're having your mini projects, your momentum. Like everything is moving in the right direction.
Yes, but I'm also trying not to overwhelm myself so that I don't end up crashing and burning again.
Mini projects. Make them small. Make them realistic.
I know. So that's just kind of like where I've been, where my head's been at, where my life's been at, and you know, I hope that none of you resonate with any of this. I hope that none of you
like, could never be me. Yeah, things are great and wonderful.
Like I literally hope that I get backlash because nobody else has ever experienced this. Like I would not wish these feelings, these emotions, these just thoughts, the self-doubt, the guilt, the shame. I would not wish it upon anyone. So I hope that none of you have, but unfortunately, I'm sure that human, some of you resonate. And so I don't know. It's kind of.
Yeah. And let us know if there are like future topics or specific questions or things that we could like maybe do a future episode on.
Right.
And dive into, because we would love to like talk more about this stuff, because if nothing else, I think it opens up the platform. And I hope I know if you've listened to at least a few episodes, like, you know, that's very much our goal and intention is to talk about those things. And we've gotten so much great feedback of like, thank you so much for talking about this. No one brings this up. And like, that's really what we're trying to do, is like have those conversations with you guys. So if there's anything in particular that you're like, I would love it if you dove more into this, then like, we'll take it into consideration.
Let us know. We're not, you know, we're not going to shy away from talking about the hard stuff. I don't think we ever have, and I don't think we ever will. but also we can only speak to our own experiences.
Yes.
And this is my experience. And so,
Can we just give like a round of applause in the audience though? Because like I said this at the beginning though, like this is a very vulnerable thing to do. And I hope it's somewhat therapeutic for you and you feel like you have the community supporting you and that you have this clean slate and you feel seen and you feel heard and you feel validated and like what you're going through is just like unfortunately a part of life and you're doing your very best. And that's literally all you can do is your best. And some days it's going to be one thing and some days it's going to be another. It's literally
hard because as you're saying that, the self-doubt is talking in my head being like, yeah, but your best isn't good enough.
Quiet.
We're working on it. We're working on it. It's a work in progress.
No, but thank you guys so much for giving us this opportunity to just like talk about this stuff and hope you feel seen and heard and validated and everything else. And you find the courage within yourself to give yourself grace and peace and understanding and the same love and support that you would show Lyssa, like show it to yourself.
Well,
right.
And that was actually something that I saw somewhere a friend said or something, but like, you want to give yourself the same love and grace that you would give to any of your friends.
Correct.
And I would never, ever treat my friends the way that my own brain treats me.
I know, because it's terrible.
It's, you got to talk to yourself in your own head like you are a loved one. And that is something that I hope everybody does. So.
The end.
The end.
Is it the end? I didn't want to assume, but I feel like we were.
End. We're at the end.
Okay, wonderful. Well,
I'm already emotional enough. We're good. Let's move it on.
A little squishy. We did tell Logan we might need ice cream after this. So.
Yes.
But thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you can follow me at Neptune the Chameleon.
Lyssa Lizards.
Check out the podcast. Leave us a review. Get early access if that's something that you're interested in. We have merch, all those fun things. So if you haven't already, thumbs up, leave a comment.
Subscribe for more mental health drama.
Oh my gosh, I know. Otherwise, thank you girlies and guys so much for tuning in and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
Bye girlies.